All right, good morning, San Diego. We're here at the Scripps Institution of Oceanography on this Wednesday. It's Earth 8 Wednesday, and we've all seen algae blooms here in Southern California when we get the rains and then the nutrients are washed into the ocean, and then the sun comes out and the algae bloom from that photosynthesis. Well, a recent article talking about algae blooms in the Arctic has just come out, and joining me now from Scripps Institution of Oceanography is Dr. Greg Mitchell to tell us a little bit more about this and how the science goes about monitoring these blooms. Why don't you tell us first how Scripps was able to look at these blooms and get the information that they do?
Well, when a bloom happens, you've probably seen the discoloration of the water. You can have a red tide, sometimes it's green, a green lake, or a blue ocean doesn't have much chlorophyll or much algae in it. When they bloom, we can tell the difference in the color of the ocean using satellites. On a clear day like this, we can map out the distribution of chlorophyll in the ocean, or the algae distribution, and we can do that globally. And we use that in the time series analysis to evaluate the distribution of algae in the ocean.
What's the importance of looking at algae blooms in the Arctic?
Well, the Arctic is a very interesting ecosystem, and it's under change. The polar regions are changing more rapidly with global climate and warming than the mid-latitudes. And so in the Arctic in particular, the sea ice is receding rapidly over the last 30 years, and it's really changing the system.
Now, is there positives and negatives to algae blooms?
Yeah, of course, algae produce half the oxygen you breathe. Microscopic algae in the world's oceans produce half of the oxygen in the atmosphere, and so that's important. They also feed the food chain, the fisheries, and so forth. They can form harmful blooms, as people have heard about too. But in the Arctic, they do feed the food web. The whales migrate up north off of the California coast and eat off the bottom there. And there's other fish that depend on the algae in the ocean. And so they're important and valuable for the fishery.
All right, and one quick question here. What is Scripps doing to further this research?
Well, what we've done is we've studied this time series. We've found that the algae blooms are happening up to 50 days earlier. And because of the life cycle and migration patterns of some of the fisheries and some of the stocks at the higher levels that depend on the algae, then it's happening earlier, and this could impact the ecosystem in terms of these other species.
Well, thank you very much, Dr. Mitchell. And as usual, Scripps Institution of Oceanography leading the way in this research. We'll be following this story and many others that come out of here. We'll send it back to you in the studio.